Good afternoon. My name is Wanda Grace Jones, and I work at Celligent Diagnostics in Charlotte, North Carolina. And I do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with me this afternoon. How many of you remember why you chose this field of immunohistochemistry or histotechnology? Now I want you to think about and describe what quality means to you in your lab. Quality can be described as ability to satisfy, dependability, and consistency. Immunohistochemistry plays such a vital role in our lives today. The diagnosis, the prognosis, the research, accuracy, and reliability are critical. The high-quality results are demanded in an era of managing time and money. What is our key goal in our laboratories today? We all work in such busy labs. We're short-staffed, but what we're trying to accomplish here is we want to reduce repeat staining and provide the highest level of quality for patient care. Because one of these days, we're not going to be doing IHC or actually histology. We're going to be that patient. Controls validate our IHC results. Controls test the specificity of the antibodies that we're testing. The polyclonal antibodies can give you a false positive results. Monoclonal antibodies can eliminate this problem, but unwanted cross-reactions can occur. False positive is actually giving you something that is not true. Cross-reactivity is the reaction between an antigen and an antibody, which was generated against a different but similar antigen. Validation is the process performed before implementing an antibody into the workload of the IHC lab. Quality control are standards that are set by the IHC laboratory and accrediting agencies. Your processes and protocols, they're established in the IHC laboratory, and they must be followed the same each day. Optimization is a method to test new antibodies in your lab, but also to test the new automated instruments that are new to our field. You can use the optimization to test your enzymes and your heat-induced epitope retrieval using citrate buffer, which has a low pH of 6, and EDTA buffer, which has a high pH of 8 to 9. And these should be documented as complete as possible. Performed with designation, your antibody lot number, the tissue type, the fixation, and processing. Negative controls. They should be checked prior to the primary positive control. Omission of the primary antibody from the staining protocol. And also, it also tests the detection system to be sure there is no background expression present. In our lab, when we are doing positive controls, we use a tissue section that contains positive components. You can do this by using a tissue microarray or just small punch boxy controls. But whatever you are using in your lab, you want to make sure that you don't put your control up too high toward the end, the white part of the slide, because if you're putting that patient on the same slide as that control is, you want to make sure that you're going to get complete coverage. Preparing control blocks. You need to prepare a log to record the control, the tissue type, the case number, the fixative, and the date. Prepare the test slide by placing the first tissue section from the test block at the top of the slide and the 25th tissue section at the bottom of the slide. Then stain with the antibody of choice. And what's important, we only do like 25 at a time, and the reason that we do this is to make sure that you're not cutting through the positivity of that control. After the IHC staining review, the two tissue sections for consistent staining or expression, You're going to review these, and if your first tissue section was positive, you're going to look at that 25th section to make sure that it was positive also. This technique provides a good quality control method to assure that the controls are always working well with the tissues selected, and that the positive area of staining or expression have not been cut through, because that's very important. You don't want to pick up a control slide and put that patient on that slide and then run it and it doesn't work. You're going to have to find another block and you're going to have to run that control again. It's going to be a repeat, and we're wanting to, keep down our repeats. Teamwork is very important in our laboratory. You and your pathologist, you bring your knowledge and your expertise to your laboratory. And always remember, it's teamwork. You work as a team, and you are a team. When does the troubleshooting actually begin? Troubleshooting begins when your first control slides are reviewed for quality. All of us keep a quality control log in our lab. You record the results, the date, and the initial. Your techs need to be sure and initial that. So if something comes up, you might need to go back to that tech and say, if there was a problem, or if maybe the control was just beautiful, the staining quality was just beautiful. You need to let them know. Many techs immediately go into a crisis overload mode. Take a break, deep breath, and collect your thoughts. Get a complete and accurate description of the problem. Always have a backup plan. Is there a way to get patient tissue stained while you are checking out the problem? If you have another tech working with you, get them to take over so you can troubleshoot what the problem is. Have you ever wondered, well, what am I looking at? Is it artifact? Are these antibody binding sites? Is this a pattern of tumor or normal tissue? All of us are familiar with 10% neutral buffered formalin, but it's still the best universal fixative for IHC. The fixative that antibodies are set, the antibody spec sheets, read those spec sheets. It's full of information. And two, if you're using B5 or 10% formal acetic acid buins, it also renders poor preservation for CD3, CD20, all your CD markers, kappa and vimentin. Incomplete fixation with the primary fixative, which is formalin, places the tissue at risk of being fixed in yet another or a secondary fixative, such as alcohol in the tissue processor. And lots of times we don't think about that. Variable and incomplete fixation is one of the most common causes of IHC problems. So if you are having IHC problems, first thing you need to check is your processor, the times on your processor. Decalcification can also sacrifice the antigen of interest. Complete fixation before decalcification is strictly a must. Formic acid, we found, is mild on tissue antigens, and it helps to preserve the antigens. Tissues must be fixed well, and when troubleshooting IHC problems, fixation is a good reference point to begin. When the formalin does not adequately fix the tissues prior to the tissue processing, then the alcohol will complete this process, which may cause IHC staining problems. And we need to remember that changes made in the gross room, they can affect IHC. The processes in the gross room should be standardized, such as fixation, tissue section thickness, and fixation time. All these are very critical and very important. Pathologist assistants and pathology residents, they need to have some technical knowledge and applications as to how the work that they are performing can affect the outcome of the IHC stains. Involve them in the IHC process for tissue explaining how the tissue section thickness and size can affect fixation and processing. later giving either good or bad results in the IHC lab. And I know all of us have asked ourselves this question: why is it not working? Possibly due to the loss of antigenicity, specimen handling, fixation, decalcification. But sometimes this is something a lot of us don't think about, is the patient therapies or drug treatments that they're on. This can cause a problem too. So just check all these and you'll come up with a solution on why it's not working. Troubleshooting antibodies. Dilution preparation. A few antibodies can tolerate a diluent for a while, but may soon begin to break down. If the antibody is not working, try a different diluent. Just correct the dilution. Storage of antibodies is critical to its stability. Refer to the antibody spec sheet. It's just so full of information, and when I get my spec sheets, I look at all that information on there, and what I do is I highlight it in just a yellow highlighter, the information that is very important to me. Concentrated antibodies, we all know, have a longer shelf life. Many factors can introduce variation in IHC staining. Use the correct control, avoid improper fixatives, fixation times, different interpretations of protocols, condition of the reagent supplied, and always use the appropriate dilution. It's very important in our labs to test each new antibody lot. Always use a positive charge slide. That ensures that the quality is the same quality used with the previous lot number. Data sheets supplied by the antibody manufacturer usually will provide the suggested dilution range. Dilutions recommended may be for the conditions unique to the manufacturer and may not be the same for your lab, but you can use this as a starting point. And they also suggest a recommended control. Most important, reagents in IHC is the primary antibody. Without good specificity of the primary antibody, the IHC expression can have problems. User must control the reagents within the QC program's documentation of reagents, dilutions, incubation times, dates to inform anyone in the lab of any changes. Techs may have to sign off or initial on this, but you want to make sure that everybody in your lab knows what's going on in IHC. Concentrates versus ready to use. Concentrates take longer due to titrating out the antibody and select the best working dilution. Concentrated antibodies, they enable techs to have more flexibility in the IHC protocols. User can titrate the antibody according to his or her own staining conditions or protocol. Use the antibody at the correct dilution. Make sure that the antibody does not evaporate during the incubation process. Rinse well with several buffer washes. And when you're making a dilution, make sure that you read it correctly. Like a 1 to 10 dilution would be 1 part antibody and 9 parts diluent. 1 to 20 would be 1 part antibody and 19 parts diluent. Pre-diluted antibodies, or ready to use. Ready to use antibodies, they're manufactured to produce satisfactory results. Pre-diluted antibodies have been developed with a focus on delivering high-quality staining performance with just one protocol. Ready-to-use antibodies, they provide standardization, and the expiration date from the manufacturer guarantees the shelf life. And this can be from a year to 16 or 18 months, and that's a long period. Errors from using concentrates is eliminated. It's easier to troubleshoot problems with ready-to-use. And ready-to-use antibodies, they can free up tech time to perform other tasks in the lab. The fact that ready-to-use antibodies do not need to be made up each day increases the speed in which the IHC assays can be performed. At least 1 hour or more can be saved daily. And ready-to-use antibodies can reduce repeat staining. Ready-to-use antibodies, they're here to stay. But I do have to say, in our lab, we use ready-to-use antibodies, but we also use concentrates. Antigen retrieval, which is also known as epitope retrieval, heat-induced epitope retrieval, and target retrieval. Restoration of antigens. Antigen retrieval breaks the protein cross-links formed by formalin fixation, and it also uncovers hidden antigenic sites. The application of heat for varying lengths of time to formalin-fixed tissues. You can use a heated water bath. The microwave, because of having hot and cold spots, I would not use it. But you've also got your pressure cooker too. But what's so wonderful today, in most of the labs that have instruments, they have got the antigen retrieval already on it, where, that's just part of the process. Many types of antigen retrievals are available. Enzyme pretreatment. Enzymes, they improve some antibodies either alone or even with heat antigen retrieval. And some of our pretreatments are on enzymes pepsin, trypsin, lysine, pronase, protease, proteinase K. And you're going to use these 10 to 15 minutes as a beginning point, and you're going to incubate at 37 degrees. Knowing the pH of your buffers is very important. For citrate buffer has a pH of 6.0, while EDTA has a pH of 8.0 to 12. And 0.5 molar tris buffered saline has a pH of 7.6. Tris buffer has a pH of 8.2. Always, always, always. We've had people in our lab that when they're preparing the slides, when they're cutting the slides, they forgot to use their positive charge slides. It slows that patient, getting that patient outcome. It slows getting them to the pathologist, but always use positive control slides. And always use distilled or deionized water in the water bath. And avoid the use of gelatin or other adhesives in the water bath, because if you use gelatin or adhesives in your water bath, that's going to cause background staining in your IHC. And you always want to make sure that you allow your slides to drain. And everybody does it different. They do it in their own way. But sometimes just standing them up and letting them air dry, or if you have a small little fan that you can purchase at Walmart or Big Lots to dry your slides. But you want to make sure that your slides are dried before putting them in the oven. When sectioning, you want to place your ribbons in the water bath and make sure you select a tissue section that's free of air bubbles and free of wrinkles, because air bubbles and wrinkles, they can contribute to tissue loss or lifting off the slide. A host of technical artifacts can lead to staining problems, and some of them we don't think about and you can't see with the naked eye. But debris such as graphite deposits, wax pencil, squamous cells, and floaters can be a problem. So make sure that as you're going from block to block and you're cutting each slide, that you take a Chem wipe and just clean your water bath off completely. And also we've seen mercury deposits from fixatives like B5. After your slides have drained all the excess water, then dry your slides in a 37-degree oven overnight or 60 to 65 oven for 30 to 60 minutes prior to staining. Care should be taken to avoid prolonged high temperatures, as this may compromise your antigens. Background staining. If your staining is too strong, modify your antibody dilution. If it's too weak, increase the antibody concentration. If you're getting negative staining, repeat the stain to rule out human error or mechanical error. Or you might need to even modify the antigen retrieval. But what's very important is you want to change one variable at a time. Okay, right here we're going to talk a little bit about background staining. Background staining includes all non-specific staining as a result of artifacts. Okay, here's a C4D where you can see the cytoplasmic staining. Okay, here's an AE1, AE3, and it's also staining the cytoplasmic. Okay, here's a Burr EP4, and it's a cytoplasmic and cell membrane. Here's a calretin stain, and it's a cytoplasmic and nuclear stain. And here's a calretinin, which has been overstained, and you've got a lot of background stain. Okay, here's a CEA, and it's a cytoplasmic stain. And this CEA, if you ever see uneven patchy staining, this is what it looks like. Here's a cyclin D1, and it's a nuclear stain. Okay, here's a cyclin D1 negative with artifact, and you can see the areas of artifact throughout. Okay, here's a HER2, and it's actually a 3+. And when we're doing our HER2s, this is a 2+. When we're doing our HER2s, we actually do a block that has 3 controls, which has a 3+, a 1+, and a negative control on our unstained control slide. Here's an HHV8, here's an HMV45, and no antibody was placed on the tissue section. This is an IgG4, which is we scored it as a 3+, and then here's another IgG4, where no antibody was placed on the tissue section. This is an S100, and we gave it a 3+, and it's a cytoplasmic and nuclear stain. And this S100, we gave it a 1+. Okay, here's a smooth muscle actin, and it's a cytoplasmic stain. And here's a smooth muscle actin, which actually has been overstained. I know each one of you have mentors in your life that mean so much to you and that have helped you in your profession. And these are some of the mentors that I've had in my life: Lamar Jones, Jim Burchett, and Godfrey Gerzon. Without mentors in our life, where would we be? So if you have someone special in your life that has helped you along the way, be sure and tell them how much they mean to you. And I just appreciate you being part of me this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Wanda. I appreciate your webinar today. I would like to ask the audience to type any questions they may have into the question box. Also, to stay true to our format, we have a featured product. And during Wanda's presentation, she talked a lot about control blocks. We offer a product that helps with building control blocks. Some of you may be aware that we have the Quick Ray tissue microarray system that comes ready with pre-made recipient blocks. So you no longer have to create your own recipient blocks. It reduces the time that it is needed to get a recipient block made. And it's versatile. You can take it on any clean countertop and go ahead and start creating your own TMA. If you need more information on this, please visit our website or reach out to your local Sakura sales rep. Wanda, I do have a question for you. One of the questions is, what do you recommend for storage of pre-cut positive controls?
Well, Alicia, most of our controls are stored at room temp. The only ones that we keep in the refrigerator, we keep the Pin 4, we keep the breast panel controls in the fridge, but everything else we keep it at just room temp.
Thank you. We don't have any other questions that are coming through today. So with that, I would like to thank you again for your presentation and taking time out of your schedule. And I'd like to thank the audience for participating in today's webinar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.